The lights in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council dimmed as the human delegation entered. This was a moment hundreds of years in the making. Humans had finally developed the technology to travel beyond their solar system, and within months, they had been contacted by the Council, a federation of 27 different alien species that governed most of the known galaxy. Ambassador Susan Miller walked with her head held high. She had practiced this moment countless times back on Earth. The weight of humanity's future rested on her shoulders. Beside her walked Dr. Alan Carter, Earth's leading xenobiologist, his eyes wide with wonder as he observed the diverse alien forms that filled the circular chamber. "They're all so different," he whispered to Susan. Indeed, the council representatives varied enormously. Some had multiple limbs, others hovered above their seats. Some appeared almost insect-like, while others resembled nothing Susan had ever seen before. The main council table was occupied by the senior representatives. The Zarkon delegate, a tall bird-like creature with shimmering feathers, looked down at the humans with small dark eyes. Next to him sat a Maluvi representative, whose amphibious skin glistened under the chamber's soft lighting. "Welcome, Earth representatives," the Zarkon spoke, his voice translated through small devices in the humans' ears. "I am High Counselor Kriva. The Council has granted you this audience as a courtesy to emerging species." Susan noted the dismissive tone but smiled diplomatically. "Thank you, High Counselor. Earth is honored to join the galactic community. We come in peace and with hopes of friendship and knowledge exchange." A low murmur passed through the chamber. The Maluvi representative leaned forward, blinking large, liquid eyes. "Your species is young, very young. What knowledge could you possibly offer the Council?" Dr. Carter stepped forward. "With respect, age does not always equal advancement. Humans have unique perspectives and adaptations that may surprise you." The council members exchanged looks. A silicon-based Lithian shifted its crystalline form in what appeared to be amusement. "As is customary," Kriva announced, "new species must present cultural artifacts for study. Have you brought such items?" Susan nodded to an assistant, who stepped forward with a sealed container. Inside were carefully selected items: artwork, literature records, scientific journals, music samples, and a small crystal sculpture, a gift crafted specifically for this meeting. Dr. Carter reached for the sculpture, a delicate piece representing DNA, the fundamental building block of human life. As he lifted it from its cushioned compartment, the sharp edge of the crystal base slid across his finger. "Ouch," he said reflexively, pulling his hand back. A small drop of blood welled up on his finger. The chamber fell silent immediately. Then chaos erupted. The Maluvi representative leaped back from the table, knocking over his chair. Several council members stood up in alarm. The Zarkon's feathers puffed out in what appeared to be a threat display. "Containment. We need containment," shouted a small green-skinned alien from the back. Susan looked around in confusion. I apologize for the disturbance. Dr. Carter has just suffered a minor cut." "Minor," hissed Kriva, now standing far back from the human delegation. "Your body contains iron." He pronounced the word as if it were the most dangerous substance in the universe. Dr. Carter, still holding his bleeding finger, looked baffled. "Yes, our blood uses iron to carry oxygen." "Is that unusual?" "Unusual." The Lithian's crystalline body vibrated intensely. "It is considered impossible by Council biological standards. Iron is toxic to most sentient life forms." Security personnel entered the chamber, though they kept their distance from the humans. "The Council will recess immediately," announced Kriva. "Earth representatives, remain where you are. Medical scans will be conducted from a safe distance." As the council members filed out urgently, Susan exchanged a worried glance with Dr. Carter. "Did we just cause an interstellar incident with a paper cut?" she whispered. Dr. Carter looked at the small drop of blood on his finger with new wonder and worry. "I think our most basic biology just shocked the entire Galactic Council." Outside the chamber, they could hear urgent discussions beginning. The first contact with humanity had not gone as anyone expected, all because of the iron in human blood. Susan and Dr. Carter sat alone in the waiting room outside the council chamber. It had been 3 hours since the incident with the cut finger, and no one had spoken to them since they were escorted out. "What do you think is happening?" Susan asked, pacing back and forth across the room. Dr. Carter shook his head. "I'm not sure, but their reaction to my blood was extreme. They acted like I was carrying a deadly weapon." The door slid open, and a small robot floated in. It projected a hologram of High Counselor Kriva. "The council is in emergency session," the hologram announced. "You will remain here until further notice." "Counselor," Susan stepped forward. "We mean no harm. Could you please explain why our blood caused such alarm?" The hologram flickered. "Iron is toxic to most advanced life forms in the galaxy. Species with iron-based blood were thought to be extinct or impossible on worlds with oxygen atmospheres." After the hologram disappeared, Susan contacted their ship, the U.S. Horizon, which waited in orbit around the Council's space station. "Captain Martinez, we have a situation." She explained what had happened. "Understood, Ambassador," Captain Greg Martinez replied. "We've noticed increased activity around the station. Several council ships have moved into defensive positions. They're afraid of us," Susan said in disbelief. "I'm putting the crew on alert. If anything happens, we'll be ready to extract you," the captain assured her. Meanwhile, on the U.S. Horizon, scientist Olivia Green was analyzing the biological data they had received from the Council's public archives. "This is fascinating," she told Captain Martinez. "According to this data, most species in the Council use copper-based blood like the Maluvi, or other elements entirely. None use iron." "Why does that matter?" asked the captain. "Iron is incredibly efficient at carrying oxygen, but it's also potentially toxic in its free form," Olivia explained. "It seems the Council species evolved in environments where free iron was rare or dangerous." Back in the waiting room, a small delegation finally arrived. It included a Lithian, whose crystalline body sparkled under the lights, and a tall, insect-like being that Dr. Carter recognized as Ixixit. "I am researcher Tsukla," the Ixixit introduced itself. "The Council has authorized me to question you about your biology." "And I am Counselor Drav," the Lithian added. "Not all of us believe you pose an immediate threat." Dr. Carter smiled with relief. "We're happy to answer any questions. How do you control the iron in your bodies?" Sikla asked. "Does it not cause cellular damage?" "Our bodies have evolved special proteins to bind and transport iron safely," Dr. Carter explained. "It's completely contained within our blood cells." The Lithian's crystal body vibrated slightly. "Some council members believe you must be artificial constructs. No natural evolution would select for iron-based blood." Susan frowned. "I assure you, we evolved naturally on Earth. Our entire planetary ecosystem is based on iron biology." "An entire planet?" Sikla's antennae twitched with what might have been excitement. "This requires further study." On the U.S. Horizon, Olivia continued her research. "Captain, I think I understand now. To them, humans are like walking toxic waste dumps. Our blood would be lethal to many of their species if they came into direct contact with it." "Great," Captain Martinez sighed. "Our first contact with alien life, and we're basically poison to them." "Not necessarily," Olivia corrected. "This could be an advantage. If our biology is so different, we might fill ecological and technological niches no other species can." Back in the waiting room, Counselor Drav delivered troubling news. A faction of the Council, led by the Volari, is calling for Earth to be quarantined immediately. They fear your iron-based biology could contaminate their worlds. "That's ridiculous," Susan protested. "We've been handling iron safely for our entire history." "The Volari are very influential," Sikla warned, "and they are afraid of what they do not understand." Dr. Carter looked at Susan with concern. "We need to convince them we're not a threat before they take action against Earth." Outside the room, They could hear raised voices as the council debate grew more heated. The fate of human-alien relations hung in the balance, all because of the iron in human blood. The full council reconvened 6 hours after the initial incident. This time, the human delegation was placed in a separate area, sealed off by a transparent barrier. Susan noticed the fearful glances from many of the alien representatives. The emergency session will now address the human biological issue, High Counselor Kriva announced. The humans will explain how they survived with iron-based blood. Susan nudged Dr. Carter forward. He cleared his throat nervously. On Earth, iron is common in our environment. Dr. Carter began. Our bodies evolved to use it efficiently. The iron in our blood is contained within special cells and proteins. It helps us carry oxygen throughout our bodies. A tall, silver-skinned alien stood up. Susan recognized the distinctive mechanical implants of a Volari, one of the most technologically advanced species in the Council. I am Science Director Nevix of the Volari Union. The alien said, Your explanation is not scientifically credible. Iron oxidizes in oxygen-rich environments. It should poison your systems. Our bodies have adapted. Dr. Carter replied, We have special mechanisms to prevent iron toxicity. Nevix's eyes narrowed. Or perhaps you were designed that way. A murmur ran through the council chamber. What do you mean by designed? Susan asked, stepping forward. The Volari believe humans may be artificial constructs. Counselor Drav explained. Created beings, not natural evolutionary products. Susan felt her face grow hot with anger. That's absurd. Humans evolved naturally over millions of years. Then explain, Nivix continued, how your species developed iron-based blood when every other oxygen-breathing species in the known galaxy uses copper or other elements. Dr. Carter tried to answer, but the chamber erupted in overlapping voices and questions. Meanwhile, on the U.S. horizon, Lieutenant John Blackwell was reviewing security protocols. As head of security, he wasn't taking any chances. Captain, he reported to Martinez, I've detected scanning beams targeting our ship. The Council vessels are analyzing our hull composition. Hostile intent? Captain Martinez asked. Uncertain, sir, but they're paying special attention to our life support systems. Olivia Green entered the bridge, carrying a datapad. Captain, I've been studying the Council's public biological database. The Volari aren't entirely wrong to be suspicious. Explain, Martinez ordered. According to their records, there was one other known iron-based species called the Ferrovians. They went extinct 3,000 years ago after a massive galactic war. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Susan was trying to defuse the situation. We propose a demonstration, she announced. Let us show you that humans are not dangerous. What kind of demonstration? Kriva asked skeptically. Your scientists can observe us in a controlled environment. Run any tests you need to confirm we're a natural species. Nevix of the Volari shook his head. Too risky. We should quarantine Earth until we understand this anomaly. Researcher Tsikla of the Tsixit stepped forward. My species specializes in biological diversity. We volunteer to study the humans safely. The Lithians also volunteer, Counselor Drav added. Our silicon-based biology makes us less vulnerable to iron contamination. The debate grew heated. Susan could see the council dividing into factions. Some species seemed curious, others fearful, and some, like the Volari, openly hostile. She sent a private message to the U.S. horizon. Prepare for possible evacuation. Council divided on how to proceed. Lieutenant Blackwell received the message on the bridge. Captain, I recommend we move to Alert Status Alpha. If things go bad down there, we may need to extract our people quickly. Captain Martinez nodded grimly. Do it, and prepare a message to Earth. They need to know what's happening. In the council chamber, Kriva finally raised his feathered arms for silence. We will take a vote. The options are immediate quarantine of Earth, controlled study of human biology, or expulsion from council space. Susan felt a chill run down her spine. The fate of humanity now rested with these alien beings who saw human blood as a thing of horror and mystery. Dr. Carter leaned close to her. Whatever happens next, Earth needs to prepare. We're not alone in the universe anymore, and not everyone out here is friendly. The council vote ended with a narrow decision. Humans would be studied under controlled conditions before any further action was taken. The Sixit research team, led by Tsekla, set up a laboratory on a neutral space station. Dr. Carter and Olivia Green volunteered to represent humanity. "Thank you for speaking up for us," Dr. Carter told Tsekla as they prepared equipment in the lab. The insectoid alien's antennae twitched. "My species values knowledge above fear. Your iron-based biology is different, not necessarily dangerous." Olivia was examining the Sixit's research tools. "These are amazing. Our technology seems primitive by comparison. Yet you achieve space travel with your limited resources," Tsekla noted. "That shows remarkable adaptability." Over the next 3 days, the scientists ran extensive tests. They compared human blood samples with those of other species, studied DNA structures, and analyzed how the human body processed iron. On the 4th day, Olivia made an important discovery. "Look at this," she called to Dr. Carter and Tsekla. "When we compare oxygen-carrying capacity, human blood is actually more efficient than most copper-based systems." Tsekla studied the data carefully. "Interesting. Your iron-based blood allows you to function in oxygen levels that would be too low for many council species. Could that be why we evolved differently?" Dr. Carter asked. "Earth's atmosphere changed dramatically over millions of years." "A reasonable hypothesis," Tsekla agreed. "Evolution follows many paths." Word of their findings spread through the council. Several more scientists joined their research team, including a reluctant representative from the Maluvi. Meanwhile, Captain Martinez was receiving troubling reports from Lieutenant Blackwell. "Sir, we've detected at least 6 military vessels entering the system. They're keeping their distance, but their weapons are powered." "Which species?" Martinez asked. "Mostly Volari, with some Zarkon support," Blackwell replied. "Keep an eye on them. And make sure our communications with Earth remain open." In the research lab, another discovery caused excitement. Dr. Carter had accidentally cut himself again while handling a sample container. The small wound was already healing by the next day. "Your regenerative abilities are impressive," one of the alien scientists commented. "This is normal for humans," Dr. Carter explained. "Small wounds heal within days." Tsekla recorded everything. "Many council species take weeks to heal similar injuries. Your iron-based system seems to support faster tissue repair." The research team's findings eventually reached Grand Examiner Volupath, the council's chief scientist. A tall, gray-skinned being with 4 arms, Volupath had initially refused to meet the humans. Now, curiosity overcame caution. "I wish to observe your research," Volupath announced upon entering the lab. Olivia quickly prepared a presentation. "We've documented several advantages of iron-based blood: higher oxygen efficiency, better performance in varied atmospheric conditions, and possibly enhanced healing rates." Volupath listened silently, then asked, "Could these traits have evolved naturally?" "All evidence suggests they did," Dr. Carter said. "Our planet's fossil record shows a clear evolutionary path." The Grand Examiner studied the data for a long time. Finally, Volupath spoke. "Your biology represents an evolutionary path the Council believed impossible. This challenges many of our scientific assumptions." "Is that good or bad?" Olivia asked cautiously. "Science is neither good nor bad. It simply is," Volupath replied. "But politics is another matter." As the Grand Examiner left, Tsekla explained the significance. "Volupath rarely admits to being wrong. This is a major victory for your case." But their celebration was short-lived. Ambassador Susan contacted them with alarming news. "The Volari have formally accused humanity of being bioengineered weapons," she told them. "They claim our iron-based blood is proof we were created to infiltrate the Council. Dr. Carter looked at their research data with new worry. How can we fight that kind of accusation? With evidence, Olivia said firmly. We need to prove human evolution happened naturally. Cycla's antennae drooped slightly. You may not have time. Military vessels are gathering near your solar system. The council chamber was packed for the emergency session. The Volari delegation had brought ancient records and displayed them on the large screens around the room. 3,000 years ago, Science Director Nevix began. A species called the Ferrovians appeared suddenly on the galactic scene. Like humans, they had iron-based blood. Images appeared showing bipedal aliens that looked nothing like humans, but data charts highlighted the similarity in their blood composition. The Ferrovians claimed to have evolved naturally. Nevix continued. Within 50 years, they had infiltrated many worlds. Then they launched attacks that killed billions. Susan stood up. What does this ancient history have to do with humans? We've never left our solar system before now. The pattern is identical, Nevix argued. An isolated world, iron-based biology that should be impossible, and rapid technological advancement. Humans must be weapons created by unknown forces. Ambassador Susan felt the cold stares of many council members. Even their allies among the Sixit and Lithians looked troubled by the Volari's presentation. Meanwhile, in a small research room adjacent to the council chamber, Olivia had been granted access to the full historical archives. She worked frantically with Cycla to find evidence that might help humanity's case. Something doesn't add up about these Ferrovian records, Olivia said, scrolling through ancient data. The timeline is inconsistent. Cycla leaned closer to the screen. You're right. According to this, the Ferrovians were documented on their world for only 20 years before they achieved space travel, biologically impossible for natural evolution. While humans have fossil records going back millions of years, Olivia added, if we could just prove that. On the U.S. horizon, Captain Martinez received a coded transmission from Earth. He called Lieutenant Blackwell to his private quarters. We've got a serious problem, Martinez said. Our deep space sensors have detected Volari ships entering the outer edges of our solar system. Blackwell's face grew grim. A scouting party. Worse, analysis suggests terraforming equipment, the kind used to sterilize planets. They're not waiting for the Council's decision, Blackwell realized. They're planning to eliminate the threat regardless. We need to warn Earth to prepare defenses, Martinez said. And we need to get our people off that Council station immediately. Back in the Council chamber, the debate continued. The Volari were pushing for an immediate vote to quarantine Earth. Susan tried desperately to buy time. We request access to all records concerning the Ferrovians, she demanded. If you're going to compare us to them, we deserve to see the complete evidence. The records are sealed for security reasons, Nevix replied smoothly. Only the Council Executive Committee may access them. Just then, Olivia burst into the chamber, followed by Tifkla and Councillor Drav. They looked both worried and excited. Ambassador, Olivia called out, we found something important in the public archives. Susan motioned for them to join her. Olivia quickly explained their discovery while showing Susan a data tablet. Are you certain? Susan asked. The evidence is clear, Cycla confirmed. The data has been altered. Susan turned to address the council. Honorable members, we have evidence that the Ferrovian historical records have been tampered with. We believe they were not naturally evolved, but humans definitely are. The chamber erupted in confusion. This is outrageous, Nevix shouted. These accusations are baseless. Councillor Drav stepped forward. As a member of the executive committee, I can request an immediate review of the sealed records. High Councillor Kriva looked uncomfortable, but nodded. Very well. The session will recess while the executive committee reviews the sealed archives. As the council members dispersed, Susan received an urgent message from Captain Martinez warning about the Volari ships near Earth. We don't have much time. she told her team quietly. The Volari aren't waiting for the Council's decision. They're already moving against Earth. Dr. Carter looked shocked. Can we warn Earth in time? Captain Martinez is handling that, Susan replied. Our job is to prove our case before the Volari convince everyone that humanity needs to be wiped out. Olivia clutched her data tablet tightly. Then we need to find out who actually created the Ferrovians and why the records were altered to hide that fact. The Executive Committee's review of the sealed Ferrovian records took 5 tense hours. When the Council reconvened, the chamber was silent with anticipation. High Counselor Kriva looked troubled as he addressed the gathering. The committee has found irregularities in the historical record. The Ferrovian case is not as clear as previously believed. Counselor Drav stepped forward. The sealed records show that the Ferrovians were not natural beings. They were created by the Volari themselves as biological weapons during an ancient war. The chamber erupted in chaos. Nivix and the other Volari representatives shouted denials, but their voices were drowned out. Order, Kriva demanded, his feathers flaring. The committee has verified this information. Science Director Nivix, you will explain these findings. Trapped by the evidence, Nivix's silver skin seemed to pale. It was a different time. A desperate time. The Volari Union was fighting for survival against the Maluvi Empire. The Maluvi representatives gasped in shock. Their ancient empire had collapsed millennia ago, long before any of them were born. We created the Ferrovians as weapons, Nivix admitted, but they turned against us. When the war ended, we hunted them to extinction. Their iron-based blood made them too dangerous to exist. Susan saw her opportunity. Then you admit humans are not related to the Ferrovians. We evolved naturally on Earth. Nivix glared at her. You may not be Ferrovians, but you're still a threat. Iron-blooded species are inherently dangerous. Grand Examiner Volupath finally spoke. That is not a scientific conclusion. That is prejudice. The council debated for hours with opinions divided. Some species supported the humans, while others feared them. The Volari continued to push for quarantine, despite their deception being exposed. As the arguments circled without resolution, Dr. Carter whispered to Susan, "We need to do something dramatic to change their minds." Susan nodded, then asked for the floor. "Honorable Council, I propose a test. A trial by blood, if you will." The phrase sent a ripple of unease through the chamber. "Explain," Kriva demanded. "Dr. Carter will volunteer for a public demonstration. Your scientists may test human blood directly, under controlled conditions, to prove it poses no threat to other species when properly handled." Dr. Carter looked startled but nodded in agreement. "I volunteer." The council members whispered among themselves. Such a demonstration was unprecedented. "I will oversee this test personally," Grand Examiner Volupath declared, surprising everyone. The demonstration was set up in a specially designed laboratory chamber. Dr. Carter sat calmly as various instruments were attached to his arm. A small sample of his blood was drawn and placed in a series of test containers. Hundreds of council members watched through viewing screens as Volupath and a team of scientists from different species conducted their tests. "Fascinating," Volupath announced after several hours. "The human blood contains iron, yes, but it is completely contained within cellular structures. It poses no contamination risk when properly handled." Then came the unexpected discovery. One of the Maluvi scientists noticed something unusual in the test results. "The human hemoglobin has unique binding properties," the scientist reported. "It might be compatible with Maluvi biochemistry in treating our hereditary blood disease." This revelation changed everything. The Maluvi had been suffering from a genetic disorder for generations, with no cure in sight. "Are you saying human blood could help treat your people?" Susan asked, amazed. "Not the blood itself," the scientist clarified, "but compounds derived from it, yes. This is a significant medical breakthrough." The Lithian delegation immediately saw the potential. If human biology offers medical benefits, they could be valuable allies, not threats. Even as the Council's attitude began to shift, Captain Martinez sent an urgent message to Susan. The Volari ships are still advancing toward Earth. Whatever you're doing, do it faster. Susan turned to address the Council one last time. We've proven humans evolved naturally. We've shown our blood is safe when properly handled. Now we've discovered it may have medical benefits for other species. Will you accept us as equals, or will you let fear destroy a potential alliance? The Council chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to High Counselor Kriva as he prepared to call for the final vote. The Council chamber was completely silent as High Counselor Kriva prepared to announce the vote results. Susan held her breath. Dr. Carter and Olivia stood beside her, their faces tense with worry. By a margin of 17 to 10, Kriva finally announced, the Council has voted to accept humans as a recognized species, with certain safety protocols in place. Relief washed over the human delegation. Susan felt tears forming in her eyes, but blinked them away quickly. Furthermore, Kriva continued, the Council orders all Volari ships to withdraw from Earth's solar system immediately. Nivix and the Volari delegation rose in protest, but were silenced by guards. The deception they had perpetrated regarding the Ferrovians had cost them much of their political influence. The safety protocols are reasonable, Counselor Drav explained to Susan afterward. Humans will need to follow special procedures when visiting worlds with iron-sensitive populations. Small accommodations for a historic alliance. Captain Martinez contacted them with good news. The Volari fleet is turning around. Earth is safe. In the days that followed, the human delegation worked tirelessly to establish the details of Earth's new relationship with the Galactic Council. Scientists from the Tixit and Lithian worlds were particularly eager to form research partnerships. We're calling it the Iron Alliance, Tikla told Dr. Carter as they finalized plans for a joint research facility. Your unique biology may hold solutions to problems we've struggled with for centuries. The Maluvi, once fearful of humans, now looked at them with hope. Their genetic blood disease had plagued their species for generations. The possibility of a treatment derived from human hemoglobin compounds brought their scientists to Earth in growing numbers. 1 month after the fateful first meeting, Captain Martinez and Lieutenant Blackwell welcomed the first alien research team to Earth. Security was tight but friendly. Strange to think, Blackwell said as they watched the alien scientists disembark. All this happened because of a paper cut. Martinez laughed. Sometimes the smallest things change history. In the new joint research facility built orbiting Earth, Dr. Carter and Olivia worked closely with Tikla and scientists from across the galaxy. Their first major breakthrough came when they successfully synthesized a compound from human blood that slowed the progression of the Maluvi disease. This is just the beginning, Olivia told the team as they celebrated. Our biological differences aren't a threat. They're an opportunity. 6 months after first contact, Ambassador Susan addressed the full Galactic Council again. This time, there was no fear in the chamber, only respectful attention. Earth formally accepts membership in the Galactic Council, she announced. We come with open hands and hopeful hearts. High Counselor Kriva, who had once recoiled at the sight of human blood, now performed the traditional welcome ceremony, briefly touching his feathered hand to Susan's in a gesture of trust. The stars have many children, he said, reciting the ancient council greeting. Different in form, united in purpose. As Susan walked back to join her team, she overheard 2 alien representatives whispering. The Iron People, one said. Who would have thought they would become our healers? The humans had gained a new name among the stars. Once feared for their iron blood, they were now respected for the same reason. What had nearly led to war had become the foundation for peace. Later, as the human delegation prepared to return to Earth with the historic treaty, Dr. Carter found himself alone with Grand Examiner Volupath. There is something you should know, Volupath said quietly. The Council has been tracking a mysterious illness spreading through several worlds. Our treatments have failed. "And you think human blood might help?" Dr. Carter asked. "It's possible. The disease affects blood chemistry in ways our science cannot address. Your iron-based biology might offer a solution where our copper-based approaches have failed." Dr. Carter smiled. "Then our work is just beginning." As they boarded their ship for the journey home, Susan looked out at the stars with new wonder. Humanity's greatest biological quirk, the iron in their veins that had initially shocked the Galactic Council, had become their greatest gift to the galaxy.